I'm going to go ahead and call to order the County of Sacramento Planning Commission for September 12th, 2022. If you'll go ahead and make the announcements for this evening.
Yes. The county fosters public engagement during the meeting and encourages public participation, civility, and use of courteous language. The county does not condone the use of profanity, vulgar language, gestures, or other inappropriate behavior, including personal attacks or threats directed towards any meeting participant. In compliance with the directives of the county, state, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, this meeting is open to public attendance pursuant to health and safety guidelines. The practice of social distancing and wearing a face covering, mask, or shield is recommended for the health and safety of all persons participating in person during the meeting, although it is not required. Seating is limited and available on a first-come, first-served basis. To make a public comment, please complete a speaker request form and hand it to the clerk. The chairperson will call your name when it's your turn to make a comment. You may also send a written comment to boardclerk@saccounty.net, and your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record.
And if you go ahead and call the roll.
Absolutely. Commissioners Borja, Rathel,
Here.
Corona Sabagnano, Tatishi, and Wong. Here. And we do have a quorum.
If you'll please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you go ahead and call item number 1.
Item number 1 is a tentative subdivision map time extension located between Belle Aqua Lakes number 1 and number 2, approximately 1,000 feet south of East Street and 1,500 feet east of Dry Creek Road in the Rio Linda, Alberta community. And the environmental document is an addendum to negative declaration.
Good evening, Commissioners. Would I be pointing to the screen for the slideshow, or do I just
You just let
present?
me know. Just say.
Oh,
And give me, I'm sorry.
pardon me.
I should probably, there we go.
All right, perfect. Again, evening, Commissioners. Name is Nate Doberneck, representing the Belle Aqua Subdivision Time Extension Number 2, PLNP 2021-147. I do wish to note that we have the applicant, Mr. Todd, and the agent, Mr. Baker, present in the audience today, should there be any further questions. Overall, we are seeking, or the applicants are seeking, a 1-year time extension to a previously approved subdivision map. We go to the first slide. This is up in the northwest section of the county in the Rio Linda, Alberta neighborhood. And if you've never been out there, it's one of those islands of excellence. That's a championship water ski lake. And that area outlined in the pink there is, I think, an isthmus, if we can say that, don't get to use that phrase that often, where there's proposed subdivision for 33 residential lots. If we go to the next slide. This is the standard aerial showing the parcelization out there. It's about 8.5 acres, and the large lot map approved originally back in 2010 was recently approved. So the small lot, which would be taking that bigger one that you see outlined in yellow there, breaking that up into 33 lots and 1 private road is what remains. Next slide, please. The details of the request are for just that 1 additional year. Attachment 3 in your packet does show the time chart. We'll get to that in the next slide. But overall, it has received the initial 5 plus the 2 from AB 333. And then right now you get the 5 years back in 2017. And recent changes to our own code allowed that 1 more year. Otherwise, it would have timed out already. And per the government code, this would be, it. There is no additional discretionary time allotments available. Now, that could change if the legislature were to do something. That would be different, but this would be the final one, which would expire essentially December of 2023 out there. And other than that, we have received no public comment. However, I did present at the Rio Linda, Alberta Community Planning Advisory Council, where it was received positively. There was various speakers there and questions regarding the project, and so they were in favor of it. The Design Review Advisory Committee also did review this project and did find it substantial conformance with the design guidelines as we would expect for an unchanged map. One thing that you will note is that the conditions of approval as written are being carried forward wholesale from the original approval. We're not modifying or changing any of those. They're going to exist as is. They were written back in 2010. And we have vetted those, and they are all appropriate. There's been no substantive changes to health or life safety that would merit reopening those conditions of approval. It's essentially, again, those 33 homes, 1 private street, and some other minor site developments for this proposed project. Thank you.
All right, any questions for staff this evening? Commissioner Wong?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It seems like a pretty straightforward project. I just have one question. The initial study was completed in 2010, and I noticed that that had used the level of service metric when analyzing the transportation impacts. Since then, the state has switched to a VMT metric, but I didn't see. I didn't see, I guess, a VMT analysis as a part of the addendum, so we're basically still relying on the LOS metric that was established back in 2010. My question is, was there any consideration of whether or not that traffic analysis should be updated to reflect the current law that is now in place, or, was it kind of decided that since this project is basically 80% done, that we're just going to go forward with as is and we're just grandfathering it in?
It is my understanding that that was a consideration. However, the underlying area is zone RD4. So our own general plan that we have has already conceptualized this area for a certain level of traffic impact. Our general plan always looks at basically the full build-out potential of any of these zoning. And the environmental review did go through this with the addendum to the existing document, as you mentioned right there, as well as the Department of Transportation and the local engineering did weigh in, and all of it found it in substantial compliance. I don't have the exact details in front of me, but from what I recall, that did not raise an issue. Again, I believe predominantly because of the existing zoning was conceptualized as RD4, and it's being built within those standards. So it's no deviation from when the original general plan was conceived.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff? All right. Thank you, Nate.
You're welcome.
And at this time, we'll invite the applicant up. If you'd like to address the commission this evening, you are more than welcome to.
Good evening. My name is Philip Todd, and I've been a part of the Belle Aqua community there for 44 years now. We built the lake.
The clerk will get you sworn in. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine. Sir, if you'd raise your right hand.
Yes.
And the appropriate response is, I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this commission is the truth, so help you God? If you do not swear, do you so affirm?
Yes.
And can you repeat your name and, for the record, make the statement, I have been sworn?
Yeah, my name is Philip Todd.
And I,
And something else?
yes, just make the statement, you have been sworn, sir.
Oh, yes. Okay. I've been sworn in.
Thank you so much. Please proceed.
Thank you for taking a moment for our project. And, the park's been there. I've been a part of my family for a long time, and we've had requests for more housing. And, we took our time to make a determination as to whether or not we'd be able to build it out. And, of course, with the whole new market, the way it's coming, who knows what's going to happen. But we sure feel good about the opportunity to be able to expand the lake, and we get a lot of good support from people. So if you folks are inclined to allow us to move forward, we'd sure like to have that extra year. Do you have any questions that I could answer for you at this point?
Any questions for the applicant? No. We're all good. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
And thank you.
All right. With that, we'll move on to public comment.
And there are no public comments this evening?
And with that, we will go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up for commission discussion. I'll be happy to move staff recommendations.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion before I call the roll for a vote? All right.
Okay.
Clerk, if you'll please go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioners Borja?
Yes.
Raythel?
Yes.
Wong?
Yes.
And the motion carries with those members present.
All right. With that, we're going to move on to item number 2 this evening. If you go ahead and call item number 2.
I'm sorry, one moment, please. Vote sheets. Item number 2 is for a general plan amendment, and it's an addendum to the negative declaration, countywide.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Todd Smith. I'm filling in for Leanne Mueller this evening, presenting the Mather Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. And if I could get the PowerPoint up, that would be great.
Thank you.
All right. So again, Mather Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. Next slide, please. Just by way of context, the location of Mather Airport, for those who don't know, is kind of right there in the middle of the county, between roughly Bradshaw and Sunrise, give or take. It's in the unincorporated county southwest of the city of Rancho Cordova. Next slide, please. There's a lot of history at Mather Airport. It originally was established as a military airfield in 1918. Then fast forward a lot of years to the early 1990s, the base realignment and closure, not just Mather, but other Air Force bases throughout the country happened. And so Mather was one of those bases that closed as a military airfield and began accommodating civilian operations in 1995. Following that, the Mather Airport Comprehensive Land Use Plan, that's what CLUP stands for, was adopted by the SACOG, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, in 1997. Subsequent to that, obviously, fast forwarding to 2014, the County Department of Airports prepared the Mather Airport Master Plan, which was adopted by the County Board of Supervisors in 2014. And that required a subsequent action to update the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan, as it's now called. And so SACOG, acting as the Airport Land Use Commission, adopted this updated ALUCP in August of 2022, so almost a month ago. And so state law requires the local land use jurisdictions to update their respective general plans or specific plans, applicable regulations, to be consistent with ALUCP. And so that's what we're here to do. Next slide, please. The entitlement request is a general plan amendment that would incorporate the Mather ALUCP into the county general plan noise and land use elements by reference. Excuse me. And what that means is that we are not trying to incorporate all of the tables, all the complex metrics relative to safety and land use compatibility in the general plan. We want to make sure we're pointing back to the reference document, the LUCP itself. We are proposing amendments to the land use element in the land use compatibility table for airport safety, a couple of footnotes there. Footnote A, cross-referencing to the noise element policies, deleting some footnotes that are no longer applicable in the land use element. And then in the noise element, a couple more changes related to policies NO2 and NO3, and then some footnotes to Table 4, which has to do with the allowed uses as it relates to noise within the noise contours. And so what these footnotes actually allow the board to consider single-family detached residential development within the 60 to 65 decibel community noise equivalent level, or CNEL, noise contours at Mather Airport under specific circumstances. And then finally, the entitlement also includes incorporating the corresponding safety zones and noise contours into the general plan land use diagram. I'm going to show you what those look like on the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. So these noise contours are in 5 decibel increments. The outermost, I guess that's a teal color, 60 to 65, moving in 1, 65 to 70. It gets obviously increasingly noisier the closer you get to the airport and the runways. And as you can see, the outermost noise contours go into the city of Rancho Cordova to the northeast, but to the south and southwest, they're all in the unincorporated county. Next slide, please. And this slide represents the updated safety zones. As a matter of changing in the LUCP, there were a number of new safety zones identified, and they're safety zones 1 through 6, as well as some more specific areas related to an object-free area, the existing runway, some planned extensions at Mather, which are not the subject of this application. But again, this crosses over not just into the unincorporated area, but also the city of Rancho Cordova to the northeast. So this action would incorporate both the noise contours and the safety zones into the land use diagram for planning purposes. All right, next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit as to why we're proposing some of these amendments in the noise element. Excuse me. Currently, General Plan Policy N03 prohibits residential development within that 60 decibel noise contour of airports, all airports in the county, so not just Mather Airport. Some of you know, but I'll say it for everyone. We've been going through some extensive land use planning efforts in the Jackson Highway Corridor over the last 15 years or so. And as a result of this new airport land use compatibility plan, the updated 60 decibel noise contour shifted as a result of this because of the changing aircraft operations in the airport master plan. And so it contracts from the southeast and expands to the east. So it went from a larger, more bulbous shape down to a smaller, but perhaps a little bit more extensive shape on the east side. And that affected all the longstanding efforts that we've been working on in the Jackson Highway Corridor, which was one of the areas identified for growth during the general plan update. And so we've been working on these 4 master plans that were initiated by the board beginning in 2012. And one of those applicants, the West Jackson Highway Master Plan, and their noise consultant, in order to figure out what effect this would have on their project, prepared a detailed noise analysis that modeled each one of the individual noise contours within that 60 to 65 range at 1 decibel intervals. And they identified various construction techniques that can reduce the interior noise levels to achieve the county requirement of a 45 decibel interior noise level. Next slide, please. And so that analysis will come as part of that individual project, but we've asked them to partake or begin that initial analysis to identify whether it's feasible. And so they've done that and found that it can be done. And that is one of the reasons that county staff is supportive of the general plan amendments to the noise element policies, N02 and N03, and the addition of those exceptions to the noise element table 4 for 4 really big reasons. First, we know as a result of our work on the climate action plan and extensive VMT or vehicle miles traveled analysis that has been done in the Jackson Highway Corridor, that residential units closer to the urban core are beneficial in terms of reducing VMT and the associated greenhouse gas emissions. Second, we believe as a result of not just work on these 4 Jackson Highway projects, but in the housing element, that a variety of residential projects are needed to meet the demand for housing in the region, and the option to provide additional units that may ultimately come as part of these projects that can meet interior noise standards is preferable to their outright prohibition. And so we want to be able to have that conversation at the board in the context of these projects. The third reason we are supportive of these proposed amendments is that the Jackson Highway master plans include a substantial amount of the cumulative infrastructure that we're foreseeing in the Jackson Highway corridor, as well as jobs. So when we're talking about long-range planning, we're talking about a jobs-housing balance. And so we see that as a benefit for not just the corridor 4 projects, but also if you look to the south and north, you see some more housing to the south, you see more jobs to the north. Ultimately, that kind of hole in the middle of the big donut, if you will, the Jackson Highway corridor provides a lot of that infrastructure and jobs housing balance. And then finally, the applicants indicate the ability to build those additional units is really beneficial to project infrastructure financing, particularly as it relates to the cost and phasing efficiency of providing the required infrastructure to their plan areas. Next slide, please. All right, so environmental review associated with this project, SACOG, as part of their analysis, prepared a initial study, negative declaration. We went and prepared an addendum to that document to determine whether there were any additional environmental impacts because we are proposing additional policies or revised policies in the general plan. And so as a CEQA responsible agency, the county must consider the initial study, neg deck, that SACOG prepared in their action as the CEQA lead agency. And the slide says, obviously, that initial study, neg deck, identified no, excuse me, no significant effects on the environment, no mitigation was recommended. And so we did the additional analysis and identified, obviously, that those additional policies or amendments were not included in the SACOG document. But we identified that there were no project-specific environmental impacts associated with noise, safety, or land use compatibility as a result of the project for consideration tonight, which is the general plan amendment. We do, obviously, in the changes to the general plan, have identified the need for project-specific environmental analysis for any project that would propose single-family residential within the 60 to 65 decibel noise contours. Next slide. And so staff recommendation tonight is for approval. We're recommending that the Planning Commission recommend to the board as a CEQA responsible agency, consider the information in the initial study negative declaration prepared and approved by the Airport Land Use Commission, which was the CEQA lead agency, and then determine that the CEQA addendum, which is attachment 7 of the staff report, is adequate and complete. And then the second recommendation is that the board adopt the resolution recommending that the board amend the county general plan land use element, noise element, and land use diagram, subject to the findings listed in this report. And that concludes my presentation. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Commissioner Borja.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for such a very elaborate, but also very technical. Really appreciate it. I just so happened to have sat on the to the Caltrans Airspace Committee for some time when I was with the state. So first two things, I just want to make sure that any of the changes that we have would be copacetic to the Caltrans guidebook of the LAUCP before we vote.
That's correct. So as part of the SACOG Airport Land Use Commission action, they're making sure through adoption of the LUCP that it is consistent with the Caltrans guidebook, and we are simply incorporating that document into the general plan. So that action by SACOG's Airport Land Use Commission is consistent, and therefore ours is as well.
Got it. Thank you. And then as we are readjusting the decibel levels, there's also going to be population density that's tied to that. So I just want to be clear that we still are keeping the population density requirements, that we're not hitting or exceeding the population density, even though the decibel or the noise pollution might have been changed.
That's correct. And so speaking to the safety aspect of it, which is where those safety zones come into play, each one of those has a certain population density max, if you will. And so we would be reviewing individual projects when they come forward to make sure that they're consistent or do not exceed those population densities in the AOUCP. And those are being carried forward into the general plan consistent with what was adopted by SACOG.
Okay, as it is, so we're not changing those zones.
Correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Commissioner Wong, any questions?
Nope.
I got a few. I'm just trying to understand more of the general plan. It seems like there's a table 1 which covers transportation noise standards, and it says all residential is basically below 65 decibels.
I'm going to turn to the noise element, which is,
I have it as attachment 2 here.
right. Right, so table 1, we are not changing anything in that table. That is correct. Noise standards for new uses affected by traffic and railroad noise.
Okay, so this is traffic and railroad noise only. And then we go table 2, which is non-transportation noise standards, which is still not, it just seems odd that we've split them up in this way, but this one here, daytime is 75 decibels. So once again, over the 65 decibels.
Yeah, so this would be for outdoor areas on the kind of the middle part of that table 2, daytime, nighttime, outdoor areas. And then on the right side of table 2, that would be the interior noise levels for day and night.
Got
Again,
it.
no changes here, and I can't speak as to how this was constructed in 1993, but it is what it is.
Sure, I'm just kind of walking through it. So as I understand it, so 65 or 75, but then we have the table 4, which is just called out for airports, but it already has an exception for Sacramento International Airport.
Yeah, in the case of Sacramento International Airport, this is probably before any of your time on the Planning Commission, that ALUCP was adopted in 2015, give or take. We did a general plan amendment shortly thereafter to incorporate that ALUCP into the general plan. Similar exercise.
Okay, so maybe I'm not as familiar with county airports, but we're going to exempt Sacramento, and then we're going to exempt Mather. Are we leaving table 4 for other airports that may be in the county, or are there other airports in the county?
There are. So Sacramento International Airport, Mather Airport, and then Executive Airport, which is located in the city of Sacramento, but
City,
still
yeah.
under the county's airport system.
Got it.
And I should clarify, Table 4, even though the phrasing of the title says this is the compatibility table for land use for all public use airports except for International Airport, the second part of that says use the land use compatibility plan for that airport dated 2013, adopted by reference. So instead of looking at this Table 4, we would pull out that other thick document and look at its land use compatibility table.
Yeah, but we don't have land use authority around the city, the Sacramento executive. So I'm just
Correct.
wondering, we're basically striking all of table 4 and
Not necessarily, no.
okay, are there other airports that the county has land use authority over around it?
McClellan Airport or Airfield, it's not a county facility, but it does also have a comprehensive land use plan like the others.
Okay.
I'd assume it'd cover Murrieta Airport and other smaller airports as well.
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Okay, I wanted to ask the question while we're doing it. It's like if we have this table in here, but we're exempting everything in the first paragraph, then
Right.
maybe we don't need the table anymore. But it sounds like we are going to still use it in the case of some other airports.
And on a positive note, we are looking forward to a general plan update in the next couple of years, comprehensive update. So that's a good opportunity to add this to the list.
Fair enough. Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, I don't have any other questions at this time. Anything else? All right. With that, we can move on to public comment.
And there are no public comments on this item this evening.
All right. With that, we can close public comment and move on to commission discussion.
I'd like to move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. Lydia, will you please call the roll?
Commissioners Borja,
Yes.
Rayfield,
Yes.
and Wong.
Yes.
And the motion carries with those members present.
All right. With that, we'll move on to item number 3. And I think we have a request for continuation of this item.
Yes, that's correct. So item number 3 is tentative subdivision map, special development permit and design review located approximately 695 feet north of the intersection of Gerber Road and Elk Grove Florin Road on the east side of Elk Grove Florin Road within the Vineyard community. And the environmental document is an addendum to the Florin Vineyard Community Plan Final Environmental Impact Report.
just provide a brief background on this. We received a notification from the project applicant earlier today asking that this item be continued to the October 24th hearing.
October 24th, okay.
Correct.
I'll be happy to move this item be continued to October 24th.
Second?
And Commissioners Borja,
Yes.
Raythel,
Yes.
and Wong.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, item number 4 was dropped from the agenda, and so we're moving on now to the planning director's report.
And then we need to take a roll call vote on dropping the item, or is it just automatically dropped?
Which one?
It's the item 3, and item 4 is dropped. Well, we've dropped from the agenda.
anything if it's already on the agenda.
So we need to take a vote on
Okay.
it.
And are we continuing that item? Is there?
We're not continuing this item. We received notification from the property owner that,
Thank you.
I'm sorry? We received notification from the property owner indicating a concern about moving forward with this request until they've worked things out with the applicant team. And so given that we don't have a date certain, we're requesting that this be dropped from the agenda.
So do we need a motion to?
So you just, move to drop it.
Perfect. I'll move to drop item number 4 from the agenda.
Second?
All right, go ahead and call the roll, Lydia.
Thank you, Commissioners Borja,
Yes.
Raythel,
Yes.
and Wong.
Yes.
And the motion carries to drop the item.
And with that, we'll move on to the planning director's report.
Yeah, Chris Bahuli here. Just have a couple of quick updates for the Planning Commission on items that you've heard before and the status of them. So the first is recycling industries, the use permit that you may recall. There was quite a bit of discussion about amending some of those conditions related to the timing of sidewalk improvements on Winona Way. That item is going to be heard by the Board of Supervisors tomorrow afternoon. And so we'll keep you updated on the outcome of that hearing. Also wanted to note that the zoning code amendments related to Senate Bill 2, that was the package of entitlements that were related to changes for multifamily use and development standards, and also our definitions as well in our code. Those have now gone into effect as of last week. Our staff did a tremendous job in getting all of the code changes made, updated on our website, new applications, new forms, all of that has been completed and has been updated on our website and launched and ready for processing. So fantastic job in getting that done. And then just finally wanted to note we have a couple of hearings coming up. So your next hearing is 9/26. We have a couple of items teed up for that hearing. And then 10/24, because the county recognizes the Columbus Day holiday, the early October hearing date is not on the calendar, and so your only meeting in October will be October 24th. And just as a early warning, there are a number of items for that agenda, so it may be a fairly late evening. Just giving you a fair warning. So, and that's all that I have.
I think that covers our miscellaneous scheduling items too.
Correct.
All right, any further public comment?
And there are no public comments.
I did want to just share something very quickly with your permission, sir.
Of course.
Last week, we unfortunately in the transportation community lost a person who's working for Caltrans staff on an unfortunate accident on the Fix Sac 5 accident that actually happened, I want to say Thursday. Some of the county board supervisors were supposed to join Caltrans and among other our community members to actually open a ribbon cutting ceremony the Friday after, but unfortunately had to postpone because of the unfortunate accident. But with your permission, sir, it'd be nice to just adjourn in memory of many of our fallen comrades that have helped out in transportation. And it's been a very unfortunate time for Caltrans, but again, just wanted to reiterate that we're all supportive as a community and trying to be as safe as possible, slow down in the cone zone and be work zone alert, because our friends, families, and colleagues are working at the shoulders, left and right, to make our transportation safe. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, we will adjourn at 6:20 p.m.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.